Nephilim update. Nephilim update. Nephilim update.
Which means it's biblical.
It's gotta be biblical.
And it's also the beast system.
Speaking of the beast system. Beast system.
Quite the start.
I love this Nephilim update at the top of the show.
Yeah, well.
You know, Nephilim update, a beloved segment for the OG Canary Cry NewsTalk listeners. Usually comes at the end, but you know, I think it sets a good tone at the top of the show.
Yeah, especially because we've been ranting about it for about a decade. So, you know, gotta get my daily fix. But yeah, this is from inverse.com under the science category. And the headline, These funky salamanders may help unlock the mysteries of the brain. Ooh,
funky salamanders.
Yeah, they must like funky music. The axolotl, also known as Ambystoma mexicanum, is an aquatic salamander renowned for its ability to regenerate its spinal cord, heart, and limbs. These amphibians also readily make new neurons throughout their lives. In 1964, researchers observed that adult axolotls could regenerate parts of their brain, even if a large section was completely removed. But one study found that axolotl brain regeneration has a limited ability to rebuild original tissue structure. So how perfectly can axolotls regenerate their brain after an injury? Well, they go into it here. It's they talk about, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there's a bunch of stuff about cells. And there's a procedure here, which may be familiar to some people who've been learning a lot about our Lego pieces, I guess. One way to understand which cells are expressing which genes is by using a technique called single-cell RNA sequencing, or scRNA-seq, or SEQ for short. This tool allows researchers to count the number of active genes within each cell of a particular sample. This provides a snapshot of the activities each cell was doing when it was collected. This tool has been instrumental in understanding the types of cells that exist in the brains of animals. Scientists have used scRNA sequencing in fish, reptiles, mice, and even humans. But one major piece of the brain evolution puzzle has been missing: amphibians. Amphibians.
Dun, dun, dun.
And they get into how they're able to detect this phase called a neuroblast. And I was going to do this in a little bit of a different order, but let me just get through this real quick. I have the paragraphs highlighted here. When we put axolotl regeneration to the test by removing one section of their telencephalon, which I think is something in their brain, using a specialized method of scRNA sequencing, we were able to capture and sequence all the new cells at different stages of regeneration from 1 to 12 weeks after injury. Ultimately, we found that all cell types that were removed had been completely destroyed. We observed that brain regeneration happens in 3 main phases. The first phase starts with a rapid increase in the number of progenitor cells, and a small fraction of these cells activate a wound healing process. In phase 2, progenitor cells begin to differentiate into neuroblasts. Finally, in phase 3, the neuroblasts differentiate into the same types of neurons that were originally lost. Astonishingly, we also observed that the severed neuronal connections between the removed area and other areas of the brain had been reconnected. This wiring indicates that regenerated area had also regained its original function.
Okay, so it's like a superpower salamander.
Yes. And
got it. Sounds good. I don't know if I like taking brains out of salamanders as much as some of these scientists do, but we've covered how these scientists have lots of crazy things that they just have a lot of fun doing to animals.
Well, they can't do it on people legally, publicly yet, so they got to roll it out on the animals.
And that's the problem with science, isn't it?
Depending on who you ask, sure.
Just kidding. So
the reason why this is interesting, and we can get into more details if we have time, which we won't, but the thing that's interesting about this, it takes somebody who's been around the truther kind of space for about a decade to remember some things about salamanders and their significance. At least, if you were into the 2012, remember 2012, Basil, everything's going to change. A galactic super wave is going to hit the earth, and we were all going to instantly evolve into spiritual higher beings. Yeah, all that stuff.
Right.
Well, the salamander was a big part of the argument by the New Agers, led by a man named David Wilcock, who, I think he put out another documentary a couple years ago. It's got a couple million views on YouTube. How come that guy doesn't get shut down anyway? This article from Scientific American came out in February of this year, and the headline here was "Junk DNA Deforms Salamander Bodies." And it says here in this article that the Neuse River water dog, Nucterus lewisi, and other salamanders represent a long-standing conundrum scientists are only now starting to understand. The animal's strange traits stem from a hidden burden. Each of its cells is bloated with 38 times more DNA than a human cell. The water dog has the largest genome of any four-footed beast on Earth, and only comparable animals of any kind are lungfish, which also have sluggardly tendencies. Salamanders owe their weird traits to their DNA, but not in the way you'd expect. DNA is often called the blueprint of life. It contains the precise information that determines the structure and function of every cell in every species. But the latest discoveries about salamanders upend this long-held notion of a fine-tuned genome. They reveal that DNA also shapes its owner in ways that have nothing to do with its informational content. DNA can distort bodies and organs like a funhouse mirror. A species can tolerate only so much DNA before experiencing those side effects. We humans, in fact, may be close to our limit. Make our genome any larger, and it could compromise our species' greatest asset, our intelligence.
Oh, that's not great.
Our intelligence, yeah.
We're gonna get dumber if we get more DNA, huh?
Yeah, you gotta refine, not to add. As for salamanders, one has to wonder why their burden hasn't dragged them down to extinction. Their very perseverance suggests that our idea of evolution, particularly survival of the fittest, has a serious moralistic bias. Work hard, young species, hone your body and brain for high performance, and someday you will succeed. But salamanders owe their success to lying around. They found a way to cheat the system. The salamanders cheating the system. And again, for those of you who have been around for a while, you may already know what I'm talking about here. But David Wilcock and the New Age folk about 10 years ago were really big on this DNA upgrade of humanity, that the universe is going to upgrade us. And that's what 2012 is all about. And as part of their evidence, they talked about a guy, a Russian, and this has its own sort of Russian implications, I suppose, if, looking at the geopolitics of today.
Here you go, Putin.
So there was a Russian scientist named Pyotr Gargajev. I think I'm saying that right.
Sounds fine to me.
Yeah, Dr. Gargajev. And he claimed that he was able to conduct an experiment where he got salamander DNA. I think I have this right. I mean, I could have the details backwards, but in any case, he took salamander DNA and, he took frog DNA and turned it into a laser beam and shined that laser beam into a salamander egg. And when the salamander egg was, when it came to maturity or was born, it was born a frog. So they were able to change the DNA based on lasers.
Yeah, the frog laser.
The frog laser,
The old frog laser experiment. We're all very familiar
now
with the frog laser experiment.
You might think that is crazy talk. However, I want to bring your attention to the National Library of Medicine, the National Center for Biotechnology Information by the NIH. This is the legitimate NIH website that I'm showing here. And the headline.
This is the shocking part.
Yes.
Yeah, this is not a weird blog.
No.
This is not natural news. This is not even a scientific journal that we know all scientific journals are kind of at risk of letting loony bin stuff in. And, we saw that all through the pandemic. But this is the actual NIH website, the government National Institute of Health website.
Government website. Now, this article was retracted, but it's still here. It was retracted on July 4th of this year, 2022. The headline in this NIH published article is retracted article because, it was retracted. A mathematical model for vibration behavior analysis of DNA and using a resonant frequency of DNA for genome engineering. Oh yeah, of course. Genome engineering.
Yeah. And this resonant frequency DNA thing, that is the frog laser.
That's kind of the frog laser,
the DNA and then somehow, finding the frequency of frog DNA and sort of replicating it with a laser beam.
Right. The abstract here, I'll read a couple sentences. The DNA molecule is the most evolved and most complex molecule created by nature. The primary role of DNA in medicine is long-term storage of genetic information. Genetic modifying is one of the most critical challenges that scientists face. On the other hand, it is said that under the influence of acoustic, electromagnetic, and scalar waves, the genetic code of DNA can be read or rewritten. In this article, the most accurate and comprehensive dynamic model will be presented for DNA. And the reason why I bring this up is not because this is weird that the NIH would publish this, but it's the fact that they quote Peter Gargajev, the Russian, and maybe that's why it was also retracted. It's like, we can't be highlighting the Russian scientists doing all the cutting edge research in the 80s and 90s. It says here, Peter Gargajev and his research group proved that DNA can be reprogrammed by words and using the correct resonant frequencies of DNA. That's what it says in the NIH article.
See, that's the craziest part to me is, we've all, it kind of harkens to the water experiments where if you, say nice things to water, then it does, it's better water or whatever. Or if you put nice words on a plant, like a potted plant, then the potted plant will get bigger. On the NIH website, government website, referring to some pretty, loopy Russian experiments. Now, we're all used to discounting the Russian loopy experiments.
West,
they had some in the West, right? Russia had some pretty famous, ESP psychic experiments that have fueled
giant plants grown under pyramids. Remember that one?
Stranger Things is kind of, they had their own version of MK Ultra. They had their remote viewing program, of which we had our own as well. And those are all generally considered conspiracy theory. But the experiments about putting frog vibrations into a laser beam and nice words,
changing a salamander into a frog,
to zap DNA to change it, is on the NIH government website.
It gets better. There's more.
Okay.
Continuing on here, Russian quantum biologist Poponin tried to prove that human DNA has a direct effect on the physical world using some experiments. Also, he found out that our DNA can cause disturbing patterns in a vacuum, thus producing magnetized microscopic wormholes.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Even more. Nobel Prize.
We've got some time travel, some quantum theory. This is great.
Nobel Prize winning scientist Luc Montagnier, known for his study on HIV and AIDS, claims to have demonstrated that DNA can be generated by teleportation through quantum imprint, and also showed that DNA emits electromagnetic signals that teleport the DNA to other places, such as water molecules. So there you go. NIH publishing this material. It's crazy. But I was like, okay, wait a minute. What are they? And they get into all the math here, which I don't know. I cannot get into the math part of it. It's not something that I have time for.
It's just very dense, for a podcast.
But they do source everything here. It's the NIH. They got to show where they're getting their data from. And some of the information is very interesting because on one of them, it's a PDF by Peter Gargajev, which is another Russian scientist who did something similar. I think it was the 80s, maybe. And the name of this article, remember, this was linked from the NIH website. The headline of this article is DNA as Basis for Quantum Biocomputer. And it says experimental work carried out in Moscow at the Institute of Control Sciences, Wave Genetics, Inc., Quantum Genetics Institute, and theoretical work from several sources are described in this work. And it goes on and talks about, all that stuff we just kind of rattled off. But, it's just kind of like, all right, well, I guess they're further along on all this than they would like us to know. And maybe the Russians have really helped out. And now that we've extracted the knowledge, we're like, we don't need you anymore, Putin. Or at least, in the world stage kind of context. But yeah, is there something you wanted to?
Well, I was just going to say it's an interesting connection with the axolotl salamander guy. Yeah, if anybody has spent any amount of time on TikTok or Twitter or the Instagram or anything, you've seen these cute little alien salamanders. They're the guys with they look like a Pokemon, honestly. They're sort of a cartoonish looking crazy lizard guy. And they got a big smile on their face. They're very strange animals. They're very alien. You can have them as pets, which, has earned people lots of fame on the internet. So they've recently sort of wriggled or slithered their way into the hearts and minds of the public recently. They've gotten a lot of attention just for being cute, weird little creatures. And then to hear that they have these superpowers that could, it sounds like they're trying to line up this research to sort of at least work towards some sort of biotranshumanism treatments or something. Yeah. And then just to find the parallels between those experiments and the NIH government website talking about pretty much, certainly related abilities. If you could take the frog DNA, turn that into a laser, just take this cute little salamander DNA, turn that into a laser. Boom. Everybody's living forever, baby.
Yeah. And
they will wish for death and not find it.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, when we talk about salamanders and frogs and stuff, they're amphibians, right? And, we often talk about the lizard people, the reptilians, right? But I feel like the amphibians are just kind of going unnoticed. And Revelation 16,
amphibians are just wet reptiles when you think about it.
True. Revelation 16:13, right? And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, so there's your reptilian, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs. This is during the end. And so like frogs, yeah. So maybe there's some weird Russian experimentation going on in this.
Well, soon there's probably going to be some American experiments.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Gone, because at Ostrich Butler, Ostrich Butter, at Ostrich Butter on Twitter, send me a link. Thank you very much, Ostrich Butter. Crazy name, but thank you very much. This day, year of our Lord 2022, September 12th, Executive Order on Advancing Biotechnology and Biomanufacturing Innovation for a Sustainable, Safe, and Secure American Bioeconomy by the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. It is hereby ordered as follows. This is an executive. This is Joe. Old Hairy Legs.
Hairy Legs coming through.
Making moves. Wow. I'm gonna just give you the opening here and then hit a couple key points. Section 1, policy. It is the policy of my administration to coordinate a whole of government approach to advance biotechnology and biomanufacturing towards innovative solutions in health, climate change, energy, food security, agriculture, supply chain resilience, and national and economic security. Wow. Central to this policy and its outcomes are principles of equity, ethics, safety, and security that enable access to technologies, processes, and products in a manner that benefits all Americans and the global community, that maintains United States technological leadership and economic competitiveness. Biotechnology harnesses the power of biology to create new services and products which provide opportunities to grow the United States economy and workforce and improve the quality of our lives and the environment. The economic activity derived from biotechnology and biomanufacturing is referred to as the bioeconomy. Dun, dun, dun. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated the vital role of biotechnology and biomanufacturing in developing and producing life-saving diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines that protect Americans and the world. Although the power of these technologies is most vivid at the moment in the context of human health, biotechnology and biomanufacturing can also be used to achieve our climate and energy goals, improve food security and sustainability, secure our supply chains, and grow the economy across all of America. It's patriotic duty, Gons, to get into biotechnology.
What did Joe
like
drink to write this or say this?
Well, whatever he was on during the "We Beat Big Pharma" is probably a new product available through this industry.
We
now
beat
listen to this.
Pharma this year. We beat Pharma this year, and it matters. We're going to change people's lives.
My impression was not that far off. Now listen to this part.
Okay.
For biotechnology and biomanufacturing to help us achieve our societal goals, the United States needs to invest in foundational scientific capabilities. We need to develop genetic engineering technologies and techniques to be able to write circuitry for cells and predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers.
This is on whitehouse.gov, folks. This is not a blog.
This is whitehouse.gov. Whitehouse.gov. You know, the same way that, 10 years ago when we were starting doing what we're doing, so many things that seem normal now, like implants, cybernetics, Neuralink and mech suits and stuff like that. It was just kind of like off the reservation as far as the normal population is concerned. We're seeing the same thing now. If we made an episode about programming circuitry for cells and programming biology, which I'm pretty sure we did do episodes on, was complete loony talk. And now it's on whitehouse.org. Let's see here. Predictably program biology in the same way in which we write software and program computers. Unlock the power of biological data, that's DNA, including through computing tools and artificial intelligence. And advance the science of scale-up production while reducing the obstacles for commercialization. That's a boring part. But it's also a huge part. Reducing the obstacles for commercialization. Commercially available, DNA programming, things like this.
They talked about products earlier, and the only thing I can think of was us. Yeah. We are the product, right? Even more deliberately.
There's a lot of very interesting stuff in regards to, if you receive a biological upgrade or a DNA upgrade, are you then, is that part of you then, patented or whatever and owned by a corporation? There's a lot of talk about that stuff. Okay, I'm going to skip down to some interesting parts and I'm going to be very quick. Okay.
I still got a little more, so hurry.
Okay, why don't you take a second?
Well, no, because I think, go ahead. Go ahead. Just finish it.
Well, I needed to find a part. It's a very long one, and it's filled with policy.
Okay.
Let me return. You carry it for a second.
I was going to make some biblical references here because part of this whole thing with the salamander and the light and all this stuff, the messaging from New Agers was that, again, that we're going to get some kind of upgrade and our evolution happens in stages when the galactic wave hits, blah, 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 all that stuff. Well, I don't believe that is the case per se. However, there's something to point out, which is that our eternal state as Christians, we believe in sort of an eternal life kind of thing. And when we look at the Bible and we look at scripture and what that's going to be like, it's very fascinating because, for example, in Daniel 12:3, it says, "And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever." So there's definitely some kind of light glow. The face like the sun is all based on Jesus, his face literally shining like the sun, unable to see. You also have Isaiah 30 verse 26. "Moreover, the light of the moon will be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be sevenfold as the light of 7 days in the day when the Lord binds up the brokenness of his people and heals the wounds inflicted by his blow." So I know there's different interpretations of that, but just this idea of glowing when there is restoration, right? I know that, again, there's differences in how people interpret, who this is, but the main point. And then Matthew 13:43, then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father who has ears. He who has ears, let him hear. So again, there's all these references in the Old Testament and New Testament that refer to some kind of state. 1 Corinthians 15 talks about our eternal state, our incorruptible bodies. And that to me is kind of like, whoa, there's something there where we are going to have these crazy sort of bodies that maybe are just light, but it's not going to come from the galactic wave that the universe you just have to be 51% good and you will be part of the new, the new age or whatever. So again, right. I just want to point out that there's biblical precedence to this, and it would make sense that, scientifically they're trying to move us into this other direction, the great counterfeit of the end times with the mark of the beast and the image and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's interesting sort of tensions because, of course, we have the biblical sort of precedent for this. Then you have the scientific community pushing for their version of it, and you have the New Age community pushing for their version of it. So you have sort of this like triune power struggle for, how this will take place. I think it goes along with that. Back to the whitehouse.gov, the executive order from today. A few interesting points. It says, simultaneously, we must take concrete steps to reduce biological risks associated with advances in biotechnology. Okay, like so what? There's dangers. We need to invest in and promote biosafety and biosecurity to ensure that biotechnology is developed and deployed in ways that align with United States principles and values and international best practices, and not in ways that lead to accidental or deliberate harm to people. Oops. Whoopsie daisies. Sounds like they're referencing a whoopsie daisies that may have happened recently.
Yeah, and also,
in addition,
let me just point out, United States principles and values is an interesting one because we are at cultural war over what that is.
Yeah, our principles and values are not necessarily clear or set in stone. Right. Then they start going into a long list of kind of what they want to do. One of them is boost sustainable biomass production and create climate smart incentives for American agriculture producers and forest landowners. Sustainable biomass, that's bug powder. That's bioproteins, biofood of the future, your nutrient slurry. Yay. So get ready for that. That's fun. A little further down, there's elevate biological risk management as a cornerstone of the life cycle of biotechnology and biomanufacturing R&D, including by providing for research and investment in applied biosafety. I don't know why I highlighted that one. I apologize. But a little bit further down, they talk about partnering with the private sector and other relevant stakeholders to jointly mitigate risks to protect technology leadership and economic competitiveness. And a little further down, they talk about public-private partnerships as well.
Always.
So it's all mingled with stakeholder capitalism, the Great Reset, and it includes lots of your favorite government
entities,
bodies. I mean, everybody is involved in this one. Secretary of Energy, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce, National Science Foundation, private-public collaborations. NASA even has a little thing in there.
If anybody wants to know more about private or public-private partnerships, just look up Joan Vion on YouTube and you'll find a bunch of lectures from the late Joan Vion, also a believer.
Homeland Security is involved, of course. You can't make super soldiers without getting Homeland Security involved. So there you go. As of today, the Biden administration aligning with that redacted frog laser
article,
biotech NIH article. We are moving into a wonderful phase. Some of the deadlines on this thing are as near as 100 days.
Oh my gosh.
I think the furthest away deadline was 2 years. So this is stuff that's all going to happen in the next 2 years.
Yeah, there was a part, I think we skipped down, but there was a part about like foreign adversaries, making sure
Yes.
that's got to be Russia, right? Because
Or China.
China.
Yeah.
True. China.
Very concerned about China and Russia taking our cool frog lasers.
All right.
All right.